up the street and here now.
Bruce said it was okay.
Oh, okay.
I have an earphone.
Good evening. We are standing at the tomb of Marie Helene Ladner, the great-granddaughter of Louis Christian Ladner, who was the very first Ladner ever to settle on the Mississippi Gulf Coast back in 1719. He was from Switzerland, and he was only 20 years old, and he was a pirate. Now, I am Gladys, Missouri Ladner. Louis Christian Ladner was also my great-grandfather 7 generations back. But I must have gotten some of his adventurous spirit because I traveled around the world 7 times over. I was a career woman and part owner and operator of the Fisherman's Wharf restaurant in Biloxi, which Risa has brought a beautiful picture here for us. Let's see. I was also co-owner with Roland and Neva Ladner, who were my brother and sister-in-law. Most of the locals just called it the Wharf. Now, I was born in 1904 in Lumberton, Mississippi, to Cass Ladner and Lily Thomas Ladner. Now, my father owned a great deal of land up there, and he farmed it. My parents had 8 children. My mother was a school teacher as well as taking care of her large family. My mother was a quiet, thoughtful person. Her greatest attribute was her strength. It was her strength that was the glue that held us together during so many trials and tribulations in our early life. You see, in the early 1920s, my father was introduced to Brother Isaiah, who claimed to be a holy man, a healer. His real name was John Cudney, and he was a con man who started a cult. He built a commune in the St. Martin area. Now, my father turned over his property, his savings, and his life to this fraud. Papa moved us from Lumberton to the coast to be near Brother Isaiah. My mother had to go to work in the seafood factories to provide for all the children. Now, 10 years later, when Cudney died in California, his followers sat vigil at his grave for 3 days because he promised he would rise from the dead. Yeah. By that time, I had moved from the coast up to Chicago to find work. But it was permanently and irrevocably changed our family life. Now, my first position was at Palmer House Hilton Hotel in Chicago. I was a quick learner, so I was very soon promoted, and I climbed higher and higher up the corporate ladder. I sent for Mama and my 2 youngest siblings, Roland and Hattie Ray. They would come and visit me every summer, but I couldn't convince them to stay. And I think it had something to do with the Chicago winters. But I was able to buy them a house in a new neighborhood in Biloxi on Briarfield Avenue. Now, after that, let's see. They decided, finally Roland decided to move up to Chicago and look for work also. So things were looking up for our family. I moved back down to Biloxi to care for my aging mother. Roland and his bride, Neva, also moved down to Biloxi. Roland began managing Fisherman's Wharf in Biloxi, which at the time was just a fishing camp with a pier. They provided things like fresh bait and boat rentals. Now, Roland and Neva also purchased a small oyster factory near Factory Row on Front Beach, which Roland operated as another fishing camp. Eventually, we began selling fresh seafood, boiled seafood, right on our pier. Even though I traveled all over the world, it was a trip to San Francisco that stuck in my mind. The idea that a fisherman could come in with his fresh catch to the pier and offload it directly to a restaurant and have it served to waiting customers that very same day, well, that was an idea we just couldn't ignore. And now, by 1957, we had made an addition to the pier that we called the Island Room. It was a screened-in porch with a much bigger menu. So Ladner's Fisherman's Wharf was open for business. We all worked night and day to make it a success. And it was open seasonally to the public. During that time, I bought an older, very charming home on the corner, near the corner of Oak Street and Beach Boulevard. I renovated the home and I filled it with antiques and souvenirs from my travels around the world. And I also purchased a section of sand beach right across the street from my house. It was a difficult time then because in 1964, we lost Roland to cancer. He was only 48 years old, and he and Neva had 2 young children, Victor and Risa. And it was just a very difficult time for all of us. Now, the restaurant was doing fabulously. It was very busy all the time, and Neva and I, we kept moving forward because that's what Roland would have wanted. 5 years later, Hurricane Camille changed the Gulf Coast forever. The devastation was horribly cruel, disfiguring Biloxi. So much loss of life and property. We lost the wharf, and I lost my home. But Neva took the reins, and in 1971, she applied with the U.S. Corps of Engineers to build the brand new Ladner's Fisherman's Wharf restaurant on that strip of beach that I had bought years earlier. The restaurant was just 2 miles east of the beautiful Biloxi Lighthouse, and we had a stunning view of Deer Island. It was very quaint and very comforting, this restaurant. We had fishermen's nets all over the walls. We had candles on every table. We had red and white check dish towels that we used for our napkins. And we had little finger bowls with tiny slices of lemon at every seat. Yeah, but the actual star of the restaurant was the freshest of the fresh seafood. We had shrimp and flounder and oysters and crabs. If it inhabited the Gulf Coast, if it inhabited the Gulf of Mexico, we served it. We also had this delicious white sauce. It was so good, and it was our very own original recipe that we had on every table. I had a nephew named Russell who, when he would come into the restaurant, he would sit there and eat that sauce on crackers until his meal came. It was that good. I loved Russell. He was such a good friend and a great advisor. Well, the people of Biloxi just flooded to our doors because when we reopened, it was like an old friend had come back home. People had missed our broiled stuffed flounder and our West Indies salad, and of course the fried shrimp and the oysters on the half shell. Now, in late 1975, Neva and I decided that we'd reached the end of our restaurant days, and so we sold to the Aldrich family. Now, we had worked with them for years, and they knew all of our secrets. The Aldriches, if you ever heard of that famous pie, which people have asked me about since I've been here, that was an Aldrich family edition, and a great edition it was. The Aldriches also served President Ford when he was down here campaigning for his for office. Oh, Victor. Vic, is that you?
The other way.
Hey there, y'all. Yes, I missed her. Hey there, y'all. I'm Victor Ladner. I was the son of Roland and Neva Ladner. my beautiful little sister Risa, she was the youngest one of us. We actually lived right next door to my Aunt Gladys, across Highway 90 from the wharf. Now, to tell you all the truth, I feel like I grew up on the pier. I was always down there at the wharf. I was the person they put to work doing all the odd jobs. I busted the tables. I took out the trash. That freshest of the fresh seafood, I'll let you take a guess who hauled it up from the pier to the kitchen. Now, basically, I was always there taking care of business. Now, on occasion, I was known to, make myself scarce. But after all, house was right there across the highway, and restaurant work is hard work. Now, tell you all the truth, my Aunt Gladys was being a little bit humble when she came out here and only talked to you all about the Allbridges. I don't think there's any shortage of restaurants that can tell you how much Gladys Ladner and the wharf impacted them. One story in particular comes to my mind about a young man named Bobby. Now, his famous mother was the one that sent him on his way down to the wharf to learn from Gladys. Way she figured it, headstrong young man like that might learn better from somebody who wasn't his own mama. Now, I guess Miss Mary was proven right once again, because now her son Bobby is the owner and operator of Mary Mahoney's Old French Restaurant, the oldest continuously operating restaurant in Biloxi. Now, my Aunt Gladys, she taught me a whole bunch of lessons through my life, but I think the one that comes to mind to me right now is the most important one she ever taught me was that all people, everybody, just wants to feel like they matter, like they're special, like they're somebody. And I remember one day she got frustrated with me and she said, "Vic, all you have to do is look them in the eyes, smile real big, and find something nice to say." Well, I tried my best. But my Aunt Gladys, she was always so much better at it than I ever was. I mean, she just had this way about her, this way with people that so totally unique, and I can still see her now. And I just, from a young age, I feel like I was destined to lose everybody that I loved. We lost Daddy when I was 11, and Grandma Ladner when I was 19, and I was 24 in 1977, and we lost Aunt Gladys. Now, when Gladys died, and I'll never forget the day they called me about this, she chose to donate her eyes to the Mississippi Lions Eye Bank in Jackson, Mississippi. And she put me down as her next of kin to be contacted when her donation had been made. Now, because of my Aunt Gladys, 2 people had their eyesight fully restored. I died myself in 2001. I was 49 years old, just a little bit older than my daddy when he died. And the thing that I hope people take away from this, from the story of the wharf, the story of my Aunt Gladys, is that the sacrifices that she made for our family and for the wharf, and at the end of her life for people that she had never even met. And I really hope that someone here in this crowd today might be able to hear this story, hear our story, and they might choose to give the same gift that Gladys gave. Maybe pass on that gift of sight when it comes their time to pass on. I want to thank y'all all for coming out here tonight and listening to our story.